Hello, everyone, and welcome to Divorce RX. My name is Vicki Townsend, and I'm the founder of TheCafeD. We are here today to talk about the process of what it looks like to be in front of a judge. And the idea behind today's conversation is going to be about how you can be very prepared for that day. It's a very scary thought. It's a very scary feeling. I know that before I even talked to Susan today that I absolutely was intimidated by the process, and I don't want that for you. So that's why we have Judge Susan Sexton. Prior to taking the bench in the late 1980s, Judge Sexton was in the state attorney's office in Tampa, Florida, where she served as a felony division chief, as well as a special prosecutor in the sex crimes division. She has tried over 150 jury trials to verdict during her career as a prosecutor. At the time of her election to the bench, Judge Sexton was not only the youngest circuit judge then serving, but also the first woman. During her tenure as a judge, she was involved in many legal activities, including past president of the Ferguson White Inn of Court, America's Inns of Court, Supreme Court Commission on Guardianship Monitoring, current member of the Family Law Section of the Florida Bar, was appointed by the president of the Florida Bar to a 3-year term on the Family Law Rules Committee from 2011 to 2014. She's a member of the International Association of Women Judges. Judge Sexton gave a keynote address to this group at its biennial conference in Seoul, South Korea in 2010. She's a certified family law mediator. She's a legal analyst on 970 WFLA radio with a segment entitled Benchmark. She's a blogger on Psychology Today with a column entitled Better Judgment. I would like for you all to welcome my guest today, Susan Sexton. Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Vicki.
You know, Susan, of everything I think that people could possibly be afraid of, I think the possibility of being in front of a judge for your divorce is probably the scariest. And what I'd love for you to talk to us about today is how we can be best prepared, how we can show up making great decisions so that we can make great decisions for how to help someone like you make those decisions on our behalf. So what would you say is the scariest myth of being in the divorce courtroom?
Well, it's hard to say because that's the scariest myth from the point of the litigant, but I think that people need to understand that let me back up. I think what the biggest misconception is that the judge is all-knowing. Certainly we have a lot of power, but it is really going to have a full grasp of your case from the limited time that you have exposure to that judge. Because really, even if you fully litigate, and when I say litigate, I mean your case is going on through the courts. Technically, when you file for your divorce, that begins litigation. But I mean the nasty, down and dirty fighting. Even if you litigate, if you have kind of the run-of-the-mill divorce, like mine, one child, a house, a couple cars, that kind of thing, basically, you might see that judge for a total of maybe 8 hours. And you're investing that judge with the decisions over everything in your life.
Well, you know, and that's one of the things that you said to me before we started this recording was that there are times when you're in front of a judge that has no more experience in the divorce process than you do.
That was me.
That was you as a judge.
Because what it does is it depends on how your local jurisdiction works. You're on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. In my area, typically there's not a mandatory rotation of judges. It's usually up to the chief judge where you are assigned. So as a circuit court judge, there are a number of assignments you can do: felony, civil, juvenile, and on and on and on. And typically what happened in my circuit is that all of the new judges went to family court because, believe it or not, family court is stressful for the litigants, but it's stressful for the judges as well. It's a lot of emotion.
There's a lot of energy. It's a lot of negative energy.
Absolutely.
On all sides. There's nothing good about the divorce process. So that's why what we want to do is, if you can start, I didn't actually even see, when you said 8 hours, I was actually surprised about that, because I don't think I was in front of my judge for a total of maybe an hour in a couple of different events. So, I mean, we went in and talked. So first of all, what's the difference between being in the judge's chambers or being in a courtroom?
Well, the chambers are usually where most hearings take place. It's an office with a table, and most of the standard discovery motions or visitation, things like that, usually take place in the chambers. And you actually can have the full divorce hearing in the chambers. But a lot of times they move it into the courtroom just because. I used to like to do that because in chambers you typically don't wear your robe. In the courtroom you wear your robe. And I think giving that level of formality sometimes helps diffuse what could be a volatile situation.
Does that robe maybe intimidate a little bit?
I don't know. I mean,
maybe with some intention there, so that you become the authority in the room.
Well, certainly wasn't my goal to say I want to intimidate people, but I felt like it lended a little bit more formality to the occasion. That people, when you're sitting around a table, sometimes people think, oh, this is just, we're having a round table. They start speaking when they're not supposed to. In a courtroom, it kind of imposes a structure on the hearing that you don't always get in chambers. So when I had kind of an all-day hearing, and there's more room in a courtroom too. When I had an all-day hearing, I used to like to use the courtroom. It just gave people places to spread out. The litigants were not close to each other, the husband, wife, and it can act as a moderating influence. Let's put it that way.
So take me through what I would like to know, the biggest mistakes that people make going in, what you've seen, and how people can go in with their best foot forward so that they can have the best outcome possible.
All right, I'm going to take the second one first because I think it plays into the first. There is no substitute for preparation. Now, of course, we're not even going to get into people that represent themselves. That's a whole other area, and it's a difficult area. But you have a lawyer, and what I tended to see is that people used their lawyer more for a sounding board than legal advice. They're not your friend. You have hired them to do a job for you. Your part of that is you need to control your emotions, because people would think that they could vent to their lawyer and make the lawyer file a motion that really wasn't really something that was going to really give them any satisfaction, pay for that. So I think you need to be aware that you have the emotional side. Do what you can. If you need to go to counseling or you have good friends, things like that, because you can't deal in facts if you have emotion. You have to deal with the emotion and then get to the facts. And of course, when you're in court, you're dealing with facts. So hopefully you will deal with the emotion so you can sort of keep it out of the courtroom. And then the other part of that is do your own part of the preparation. Now, certainly your lawyer has the legal part, but there's a lot of paperwork that you need in order to do your divorce, what we call discovery. It's all the financials, and for most of us, it's not, I mean, we don't all own baseball teams like big divorces have. I mean, most of us, it's fairly simple to get the paperwork. If you get the paperwork together, make a copy for your soon-to-be ex. Why not? It's going to overall save money. I had a hearing where an attorney filed to hold the husband in contempt for not turning over the paperwork. The husband said, I can't turn over the paperwork. I was ordered out of the house, and all the paperwork's in the house. I mean, think about that. So when you can deal with the emotion, keep it out, you can think through things like that. There is no reason to not move the situation forward by getting as much of the stuff that you can to your attorney and making sure that your attorney has all he or she needs in order to move forward. So it's preparation. and it's also dealing with the emotion, I think, are the two biggest things.
So that's on the positive. That's the best thing that they can do to have the positive. What are some of the worst mistakes you've seen people make coming into your courtroom?
Well, exactly what I mean. It's the flip side of that. Letting emotion drive, like that hearing that I had. The husband, did the woman actually even think that maybe she had all the paperwork? She went to her lawyer. Did her lawyer ask her, well, who's got the paperwork? No, he just listened to her vent. He filed a motion. We had a hearing in court that was absolutely useless, but I'm sure that lawyer charged the woman. And of course, the husband had to pay. So, and we're talking, it's not cheap. Those little hearings that are 15, 20 minutes, they're basically about $1,000 worth of legal time. The consultation, the filing, consulting with the paralegal, scheduling with the judge, going to the hearing. I mean, that's, you're paying $300-400 an hour. It goes quickly.
What about, is there anything about personal behavior, manners, appearance that you can suggest, make some recommendations?
Well, here's the funny thing. It's sort of like in the old days when I first started in the 80s, you never had to tell somebody to take off a hat to be in court. It was just understood. Of course, people didn't wear baseball caps. Nowadays, they come in, they're like this, they're like this, they're like this, and my bailiff has to say, sir, would you please remove your head covering? Of course, we're not talking about religious headgear, but for the most part, usually baseball caps. People walk in. They kind of walk in like it. You say people are intimidated. I see people very casual coming into court, as if it's just another day. They come in dressed. We would have to sometimes send people home for being dressed inappropriately.
Really? So let's give some so that they can put their best foot forward. Would you say like a casual business and nicer?
Yes. You used to be able to say kind of what you would wear to a funeral, but have you been to a funeral lately with the way people dress? It's not, I mean, there is, you used to be able to say the way you dress for church. I've seen people, it's just, there are no standards, but I would say just a plain pair of pants, no flip-flops, a collared shirt for a guy, and some modest blouse for a woman, and that's it. I don't want to see your tattoos all over the place. I'm sure they're attractive, but not really in court.
So we want them to put their best foot forward. As this is something that is the deciding factor.
It's their life. It's their life.
This isn't something to be toyed with. This isn't something to be taken lightly. This is something where if you go in and you are dressed for success, what do they say? That dress for the job you want, not for the job that you have, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's something about that here that can be said about dressing for what you want as your outcome. So if you don't care about your outcome, dress like you don't care.
Well,
right?
and come to court inappropriate. I had a hearing where the woman came in, and it's very difficult to get sole custody in Florida and pretty much any jurisdiction. You have to show that the other side is deficient in some way. Usually it's drugs or alcohol. So her allegation was that he was an alcoholic, and she didn't want the kids driving with him and that sort of thing, which was made easier because he showed up actually drunk to court. Yes.
Not a good decision. Yeah. Not a good decision.
It wasn't even and belligerent and had just lost his job because of drinking. I mean, some people make your job easier. There was no question in that situation that he would not be driving those children anywhere unattended.
What would be one recommendation or one suggestion for those that are intimidated by somebody like you? This is the process itself, going into the courthouse, even just thinking about it is a very scary thing. Is there some words of advice that you can give to people that are listening so that they can to take that edge off? Because one of the things that I love about you is that here you are, this amazingly successful, fabulous judge, and if the best thing that could come from this is they look at you and they go, but she's just a normal woman. She's just a normal human being with normal feelings and normal emotions and normal stuff that goes on. How can we make it so that people can understand that that's the way this is? We're dealing with people.
Well, I mean, you're dealing with people, but you're dealing with a position. And I always said that I am not my position. I mean, I always never found that I like to play that up. But when you're in court, there's a difference. I mean, you're there to do a job. You represent something. You represent the state. You represent the court system. I can understand, though, some people you could tell they were just a little nervous coming in. There is nothing to prevent them from going into court before their actual hearing. It's what I used to do with children witnesses. I would bring them in, or witnesses. I always subpoenaed the witnesses before I had a trial and would walk them through. Okay, this is the judge. This is the judge's courtroom. This is where we're going to be. And if nobody was in court, I'd put them up in the witness stand. This is how it's going to be. So I think they can ask their attorney, what is the judge's local practice? In other words, if it's an all-day hearing, are we going to be in the courtroom? There is nothing to prevent you from going into the courthouse. Family law cases are public record, unfortunately. I don't agree with that, but they are. They're open to the public. So you can go into any judges. You can find the judge that you know, and you can go into that judge's hearing room. Usually in a hearing room it's a little bit more difficult, but they are open. That's why a courtroom, you can go in, you can observe, and just get a look at what how the judge conducts himself or herself. Now, sometimes the bailiffs will come up. My bailiff used to do that because we like to know who was coming into court, because you have to be concerned about security. But you can go in, and if the bailiff comes up to you, you can just say, I'm just here observing. I mean, you don't have to say anything more than that. You're allowed to be in those hearings.
Wow, so that's a good idea. So get familiar with what you're about to experience.
Sure.
When it's, so go, and I understand, but I think that going in and understanding what the room looks like so that you can get a feel for what it's going to feel like. It just takes the sting out of it a little bit. That's great advice. Is there anything else that you can recommend for everyone?
Well, I think that's about the best thing. The other thing is that in today's world, of course, we have so much information on Google. And what you can Google anybody's name, and it will give you, like even on the official bio, a lot of times judges will put down what their community involvement is. Most of us are involved in legal organizations, and we also like to be involved in community organizations. And if you're involved in community organizations, you can take a look at that, and it might give you an idea what type of person that person is. You have people with different religious beliefs and that sort of thing. I mean, I had a divorce case where the husband they were in a very conservative religious group, and the reason for the divorce was the husband was gay. And so, in front of some judges who were also in that same group, that might not be for me, it didn't matter. I mean, it wasn't really a situation. But the wife was devastated, of course. But there are things like that. You can see, is the person in the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, do they get involved with children's? I mean, it kind of gives you a little flavor for who the judge is. And of course, the other thing that you need to be aware of is when you do the assignments, find out from the lawyer how the judges are assigned to family court. Because as I said, with me, I was a total newbie, new to the bench and new to family court. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, of course I learned, but it was a real eye-opener for me. But if the judges rotate on a regular basis, where they do some areas every 2 years, and you start your divorce in, let's say, July, and you are starting to really get into it, you're going to fight. By January, that judge may be out of that division, and that judge is not going to be taking your case with him or her. So that's something else to consider, and it might make you more amenable to mediation, or because you'll start with somebody totally new, maybe even new to family court.
I did
I
that.
was new to family court.
Exactly what happened to me, Susan. I was halfway through my divorce, and all of a sudden I got someone else, and in this case he was new to family court as well, so that maybe down here in the South Florida community it's a very similar situation. And I don't know if that sounds like a good thing or if that sounds like an absolutely horrible thing, that to have somebody that has no experience in the divorce court. But I do understand why it's important to turn these people over, because I know many divorce attorneys, and I know that living in that negative energy is exhausting. Like,
well, there are very few. There are a few that like it. They have practiced it. One of my friends now, who has been in family court here locally, used to practice. In fact, I was really one of the ones who told her she needed to run for judge. She did, and she ran. So she's been there, and she enjoyed it, and she had a lot of respect with the family law lawyers. But I always felt sorry for the family law lawyers, because they were constantly getting new people, and you really do. It's not so much that everybody is so different, but you kind of gear your case to the person that's there. There are subtle differences, and if you ask me to name one off the top of my head, I don't know that I can, but there are subtle ways that they'll present a case to you as opposed to a case to somebody else. Maybe they'll give you, if you're new, more of an explanation because they know. Whereas the other judge who's got more seniority, they'll just kind of run through things because they know the judge has already dealt with it. I mean, there are things like that a good practitioner will be able to do.
So let's talk about the importance of having the right attorney in that courtroom with you, because I know that you and I were talking about that so much of how this goes is based on who you have alongside of you.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah. So what would you say, well, I have a couple of questions. The first being, what would you see is the best decision when somebody's picking a divorce attorney that works well in the courtroom? Would you say, is that like synergy? Is it, chemistry?
Well, again, you get back to the research. I mean, there's so many. Everybody has a website. And on the website, I always tell people, if you can understand what that person has on the website, that's a good sign, I think, because they want you to understand. In other words, you can explain, well, the statute is this, this, and this in legal terms, or you can try to explain it to where people understand it more in everyday language. I think you need to understand that you are the consumer. You are hiring the lawyer. And I would always say, get a couple of names, maybe people, like you've been divorced. If somebody called you about your lawyer, you may or may not recommend them. Or you may recommend somebody and say, well, he was a really pit bull, and he really took my husband to the cleaners. That's kind of language that I think is a little, I don't know, off-putting, because especially if they're children, you don't want to get into that kind. You're going to be tethered to this person for a long time if you have kids. That's just the long and the short of it. So I think you can do your research, you can ask people, and I would say interview at least 2 people. I think that sometimes they'll give you a free interview, free consultation. Sometimes they will charge. If it's a person and you've gotten some good recommendations, even if they charge, I think it's worthwhile to pay. But before you go, again, have your questions specifically written out. Don't go talking about what a jerk your soon-to-be ex is. It wastes his time, her time, and your time, and it doesn't get you anywhere. The emotion fact thing coming into play there. So your research, interview them. If they want you to sign the contract right then, that might not be the person for you, because they should give you a chance to reflect on it, and it is a lot easier to hire a lawyer than it is to fire a lawyer. So be cautious about that.
Oh, that's good advice. It is easier to hire than to fire. Um, question, and this is one of those, an uncomfortable kind of question, but is it true that relationships that attorneys have with judges has an impact as to decisions in the courtroom? Like if my attorney has a great relationship with the judge, or we can use mine very specifically. When we got the new guy for our attorney, my attorney goes, I don't know how this is going to go, because I have no idea about this guy. I don't know how he rules. I don't know the first thing about him. What do you think is that important, that there is a relationship there? Does that impact the process? Does that impact the decisions that you make?
Well, I think just what your attorney said, it relates back to what I was talking about. He didn't know this person. They transferred this person in. Probably somebody like me, your attorney did family law. This person might have been in criminal court, so he had no idea. It's that familiarity that is, when you talk to an attorney, when you hire an attorney and they say, I specialize in family law, I've experienced, there's also board certified, which is very high end. But when they talk about that, what you're paying for is the fact that they understand that judge. Every judge, even if we don't think, we have our little peccadillos, we have our little ways that we like things done. And it does matter if you have that person who doesn't know you and just totally misuses the time. I mean, I was a big time person. Everybody knew when they came in, they had to be prepared. I wanted it bing, bing, bing. Then we can get to the testimony. I also knew that the parties had to vent a little bit. I used to allow a little bit of venting, even though if the other side would say, we object, it's blah, blah, blah. I'd say overruled. Let them vent a little bit, get it a little bit out. Then we can get to the facts. But there is a value in having a lawyer who is involved with the local bar association, who knows the other lawyers, because they tend to be more cooperative. You don't want that lawyer that's going to always throw the roadblock. So there's that value, and their reputation in the legal community is vital, and their reputation with the judges. I mean, judges know who to trust and who not to trust, and you really have to do your homework to try to find that person who's going to represent your issues in an ethical way, and you get your value for your money. I mean, there's a lot of good family law lawyers out there. I mean, there really are sole practitioners, but there are ones. I mean, there's always people in any profession that I wouldn't hire.
Right, right. And so, lastly, when it comes to the decisions for the child, do you as the judge actually sometimes end up making those decisions on behalf of the best interest of the child? And if so, how can somebody take a little bit of that out of your hands and put that back into the driver's seat?
All right, maybe I'm not understanding. Obviously, if there's an issue of, we don't, of course, call it custody anymore.
Right, now it's
okay. What is it called? Share time now, or parenting time?
Parenting, or
there's a lot of different terminology, but most jurisdictions have gotten away from the idea that one side has custody and a parent has visitation. Both parents, you don't need to visit with your, have a set thing to visit with your own child. But if there is an issue with regard to, let's say, sole parental responsibility, you want to have the total control of the child. For like the woman whose husband was a drunk, you have to prove that, because the starting point is that there's kind of a 50-50 split. If you want less than 50, I mean, you might say, I want less than 50 because, after all, mothers, we feel like we've done more and been there, getting up for feedings and stuff like that. If you want that and your other side doesn't agree, then you have to bring something to court and think to yourself, why is it that I want that other than my own desire? Is it because the child is not doing well in school? Is it the child doesn't get adequate nutrition at dad's? I mean, there has to be some reason that you can actually think, and I say write things down. Why is it that you think that? And if you write it down and you take it to your lawyer and say, look, this is why I want 60-40 split or 70-30. What do you think about these reasons? And if they know what they're doing, they'll probably go, no one, no two. I mean, because a lot of those things just, it's a brave new world. It doesn't matter in divorce court. I mean, it's 50. That's the starting off point, 50-50 split.
So from there, when it comes to co-parenting, 70%, 80% goes to one parent over the other. Is that something that the judge typically makes, or how is that?
You have to really prove that. That's what I said. If you think that you want the bulk of the parenting time, let's say it's female, dad travels extensively for his job. He's not in town, but 1 week out of every 2 months or something, yet he's coming in wanting 50-50 share time. That would be something where you would say, here is his schedule, he doesn't disagree, this is the person who is watching the children, you know, that kind of thing. You have to be able to make your case. And yes, the judge, it would be up to the judge to decide, is this sufficient to veer from what is routinely accepted as the standard, which is equal parenting time. So it's an uphill battle, but I would say this, it's an uphill battle, and speaking personally from my own personal, it is a tough pill to swallow. It is really tough. And when the person that you think hasn't really been responsible the whole time comes in and wants equal parenting, and his time is spent with his girlfriend, believe me, it's tough to swallow. But I did it. And sometimes you just have to suck it up for the good of the children, because overall statistics show that the thing that really is harmful to children in the long run is the litigation. It's the back and forth. Not whether they ate McDonald's every night they were with dad. You don't like it, but I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. And so you have to really rein in your emotion and just say what truly is in the best interest of this child.
And so as we wind this down, any last bit of advice, not from a legal perspective, but for that courtroom ease, to make the process go smoother, less headaches, and perhaps the way they hope it goes? Would you say that all goes back to that whole preparation talk?
I think so, and I think for me, just personally, the way I used to do my trials is I would write out what I wanted to say, and what, I mean, you can talk to your lawyer, okay, we're going for 60% share time. What do I need to show? Write it out. I mean, I think when you write things out, it helps you focus on what you need to do, and focus is really the name of the game, because if you're going in and you're intimidated, you tend to lose focus, and that is the time that you really want to focus. And listen to the cues from your lawyer, because if you've had to pick the right person, you have a good relationship, you just need to let them you just need to know that you have picked the right person and they are going to do the best job possible for you. So let them do their job.
Perfect, perfect. Now, as we come down, I wanted you are writing a book?
Yes, yeah. Well, I have a little book called 5 Steps to Hiring the Right Divorce Lawyer,
which we need to put a link on. How do they get that?
Well, it's actually available through Amazon, either on ebook. And what happened was, when I was writing this other book, The Divorce Dance, and doing the proposal, this was one chapter, and it had to do with fees and things like that. So, and of course, in conjunction with that is when I launched the podcast, 50 Shades of Divorce, to give me more of a social media platform, which is what publishers look for, as you know.
Absolutely. So now we've got 50 Shades of Divorce. We've got your book. So how can our people get in touch with you, follow you? Listen, you've got a podcast out now. Let's talk real quickly about those, and when is your book coming out?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I'll have to check with the literary agent and see.
And we're going to put it on our site. We'll have it on our site ready to go. When it's ready, we'll let people know. And your Twitter handle, how do our people follow you on Twitter?
At Judge Sexton.
Judge Sexton. And Facebook, they can connect with you on Facebook?
Yes, Susan Sexton on Facebook.
And the name of your book is going to be The Divorce Dance?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. This was very helpful. And I think that as people that are watching this understand, they need to be prepared, right? They need to have the right person by their side representing them. Whether you like them or not, just make sure that they have been the person that gets you prepared. And then show up on court day, go see the judges. Can they go see judges' chambers? I don't think so.
You usually can, but it's just a little bit harder to do that. I mean, because the chambers are usually like adjunct to the office, but they are supposed to be open to the public, and there's no reason why you can't other than just space. A lot of times they're just smaller.
So we want if you're nervous about the thought of it, if it would be helpful, go see the courtroom, go see the judges' chambers before you have to go in there on that day, and show up looking decent, right? We're not asking for going to the prom. We're asking for you to show up clean, neat, and presentable. No baseball caps, no pants with your underwear hanging out the back. Go in business casual or greater. This is the fight of your life, and we want people to understand that they need to take it very seriously. But there is no reason to be intimidated by the judge process, because they're just people just like you. And so today they got a chance to see that. Judge Susan Sexton, thank you so much for being a part of Divorce RX. We are so grateful that you are here. And we will be doing some other things together really soon. I just know it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Vicki.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.